Hello, my name is Casey Sims, and today I will be presenting an analysis of communication through the lens of report and command messages. This presentation will explore the distinctions between these two forms of communication, their relevance in therapy, and how they contribute to metacommunication and feedback loops in relationships. Recognizing these underlying messages can enhance therapeutic interventions and improve family dynamics. Section 1, Report versus Command Messages. This section examines the distinction between report and command messages in communication. These two levels of messaging are present in all human interactions and play a crucial role in shaping relationships, particularly in therapeutic settings. Understanding how these messages function provides insight into underlying relational dynamics. Report messages are explicit, factual aspects of communication. Wozalowick et al. 2011, describe them as the content level of a message, meaning they focus solely on what is being said without implying relational expectations. In therapy, these messages help structure conversations and ensure the therapist and client understand discussion clearly. For example, when a therapist states, "Our next session is on Monday at 2 p.m., this message simply conveys scheduling information. Similarly, referencing previous discussions, such as last session, you mentioned feeling anxious at work, helps maintain continuity in therapy without introducing assumptions about the client's emotions or behavior. Another example is an observational statement like, "I notice you're speaking softly today." While this acknowledges a behavior, it does not assign a meaning, allowing space for the client's interpretation. Dr. Gerhardt, 2018, emphasizes that report messages are essential for clear and effective communication. However, Haley, 1994, notes that they do not address relational dynamics. They lack the deeper, often implicit meaning that influences how messages are received. Understanding report messages is necessary, but recognizing how they interact with command messages provides a more complete picture of communication in therapy. Command messages often operate beneath the surface of verbal communication, shaping relationships and guiding responses. Watzlawick et al. Explain that while report messages focus on factual content, command messages establish how those facts should be interpreted. These messages influence relational expectations and create unspoken rules about how individuals engage with one another. For example, if a therapist says, "Take your time before answering," the report message is about allowing time, but the command message signals an expectation for careful reflection. Similarly, a statement like, "It is important that we are honest with each other," promotes honesty while setting a relational norm for trust and openness. Nonverbal cues also function as command messages. A therapist who nods, leans forwards, or maintains steady eye contact communicates engagement and encourages further disclosure. Silence can serve as a command message, signaling that the therapist is waiting for a response or creating space for deeper reflection. Haley, 1994, emphasizes that command messages, whether verbal or nonverbal, shape the emotional tone of an interaction and influence how clients respond. Understanding command messages is essential in therapy because they often dictate the direction of the conversation and the client's level of comfort in sharing. Unlike report messages, which focus on explicit content, command messages subtly establish power dynamics and relational roles. Recognizing their impact allows therapists to foster a more intentional and supportive therapeutic environment. Report and command messages function simultaneously in communication but serve different purposes. Watzlawick et al. Describe report messages as conveying explicit, factual content. These messages are direct and focus on what is being said. In contrast, command messages convey relational meaning and expectation. These messages influence interactions by shaping roles and power dynamics. Haley, 1994, highlights that command messages often operate implicitly, guiding interactions without being explicitly acknowledged. Understanding the distinction between these two levels of communication is crucial. While report messages provide clarity, command messages reveal underlying relational dynamics that influence behavior and emotional responses. Recognizing both types of messages allows therapists to navigate complex family interactions and facilitate meaningful change. Section 2, Metacommunication in Therapy. This section explores the concept of metacommunication and its role in therapy. Metacommunication refers to the messages that go beyond the literal content of words, shaping how communication is understood within relationships. It plays a critical role in therapeutic interactions by influencing the emotional and relational context of conversations. By understanding metacommunication, therapists gain deeper insight into underlying patterns in family dynamics and interpersonal relationships. Metacommunication in command messages refers to the unspoken relational meaning embedded in a directive. Watzlawick et al. Explained that every command message carries an additional layer of meaning beyond the words itself. This layer is influenced by tone, body language, and the context in which the command is delivered. For example, if a therapist says, "Tell me more about that," how it is said impacts how the client perceives it. A warm, patient tone can signal encouragement, making the client feel safe to share. However, if the same phrase is spoken with an impatient or rushed tone, it may imply frustration or pressure, leading the client to withhold information. How a command message is delivered often influences how it is received, more than the words themselves. Watzlawick et al. Explained that metacommunication determines whether a command message fosters connection or resistance. For instance, if a therapist tells a client, "You can trust me," but avoids eye contact or shifts uncomfortably, the metacommunication may contradict the verbal message, making the client feel unsure rather than reassured. Similarly, a directive like "calm down" may seem reasonable, but if delivered in an authoritative or irritated tone, it may escalate emotions rather than de escalate them. Section 3, Feedback Loops. This section explores the concept of feedback loops in relationships and their role in communication patterns. Feedback loops describe the ongoing cycles of interaction that reinforce behaviors and relational dynamics. These loops can either maintain stability or drive change within a system. Understanding how report and command messages contribute to feedback loops is essential in therapy, as these patterns shape how individuals and families interact over time. Feedback loops describe recurring cycles of interaction that shape relationships. Watzlawick et al. Explained that these loops reinforce behaviors, either maintaining stability or amplifying patterns. Ryder describes negative feedback loops as cycles that resist change, reinforcing behaviors that keep a relationship locked into a familiar dynamic, even when that dynamic is problematic. A classic example is a parent teen conflict where the teen says, "You never listen to me," and the parent responds, "Because you always talk back." This exchange reinforces defensiveness and repeated arguments. However, positive feedback loops can also exist. Instead of reinforcing conflict, these loops strengthen emotional bond and encourage positive behaviors. Gerhardt explains that when a parent consistently affirms their child's effort by saying, "I see how hard you are working," the child feels validated and motivated to continue. Over time, this creates a reinforcing loop of encouragement and effort. Both positive and negative feedback loops play a critical role in shaping relational dynamics. Therapists can help individuals and families recognize these patterns and make intentional shifts to break unhelpful cycles while reinforcing positive ones. Both report and command messages play a role in reinforcing feedback loops. Watzlawick explained that report messages provide factual content but can strengthen relational expectations when repeated. In negative feedback loops, these messages reinforce problematic behaviors. For instance, if someone repeatedly tells their partner, "You always interrupt me," this statement not only describes a behavior but also sets an expectation that the interruption will continue, shaping future interactions. However, in positive feedback loops, report messages can encourage desired behaviors. Instead of focusing on what is wrong, someone might say, "I appreciate how you listened just now." This report message reinforces active listening and creates a cycle where positive behaviors are more likely to continue. Command messages, which establish relational expectations, also influence feedback loops. In a negative cycle, a statement like, "You need to calm down," may escalate conflict, especially if delivered in a frustrated tone. However, in a positive cycle, a statement like, "Take your time, I want to hear what you have to say," sets a different expectation, encouraging openness and thoughtful discussion. Metacommunication enhances these effects. How a message is conveyed through tone, facial expression, or body language can influence whether it supports a healthy or unhealthy pattern. Recognizing the role of report and command messages in feedback loops allows individuals to make small but meaningful shifts that can break negative cycles and foster more positive interactions. To improve relationships, individuals and therapists must work to break negative feedback loops while reinforcing positive ones. Watzwalik et al. Explained that one way to disrupt negative cycles is by shifting report messages from blame to neutral observations. Instead of saying, "You always ignore me," rephrase it as, "I feel unheard when I try to share," removes the accusation and encourages discussion. Similarly, adjusting command messages can prevent escalation. Gerhardt suggests replacing a directive like "stop yelling" with "let's take a break and talk calmly." This approach shifts the expectation from confrontation to collaboration. Additionally, aligning metacommunication ensures tone, facial expressions, and gestures support the intended message. Haley warns that mixed signals, such as saying "I care" while looking distracted, can reinforce distrust instead of connection. While breaking negative loops is essential, it is equally important to reinforce positive loops. Writers suggest using report messages to highlight relational progress, such as saying, "I appreciate how you considered my perspective." This message encourages continued respect and active listening. Command messages can also strengthen relationships when framed to encourage connection. For example, instead of a neutral statement like, "We should communicate better," a more engaging directive like, "Let's keep finding ways to support each other," creates a forward moving cycle of relational growth. Finally, metacommunication enhances positive feedback loops by reinforcing warmth and emotional safety. Supportive tone, eye contact, and open body language communicate sincerity and build trust. Individuals can move away from destructive cycles by consciously shifting communication patterns and creating interactions that promote understanding, support, and emotional connection. This concludes my presentation on report and command messages, metacommunication, and relational feedback loops. Understanding these concepts allows us to recognize the hidden dynamics in communication and how they shape interactions in therapy and daily life. Individuals can improve their relationships by becoming more aware of explicit and implicit messages, and therapists can guide more effective interventions. Thank you for your time and attention.